Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is 𝗚𝗚𝗙𝗖𝗍. We at Quaynote Communications are delighted to welcome you to today's webinar. Our panel today will look at the thorny issue of Brexit. What are its implications for business aviation? And moderating the discussion today is Matthieu de Varax from Odi-se, Avocat. And I will now, without further ado, hand over to Matthieu. Thank you very much. Enjoy today's session.
Thank you very much, Lorna, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here to discuss Brexit with our panelists, which I will introduce in a minute. A lot has been said before Brexit, hasn't it? A lot of seminars and conferences discussing Brexit and aviation, but that was before Brexit, of course. Another time, no one knows whether there was going to be a deal or not. Now, Brexit's gone live. It's been there for more than 4 months. So it's time to ask ourselves where do we stand. And I'm very pleased to say that we have 6 very talented and experienced panelists with us today to answer that question. First, Martyn Fiddler Aviation. They hardly need any introduction. They're expert in tax and customs. Adrian Jones and Heather Gordon for Martyn Fiddler will discuss some aspects of Brexit with us. And I'm very pleased again to say that we have 4 operators with us today, this afternoon, 2 from the UK, 2 from the EU. From the UK, we have Derek Thompson, who's accountable manager with Air Charter Scotland, and Glenn Evans, who's chairman at Synergy Aviation. On the EU side, Bernhard Fragner, CEO of 𝗚𝗘𝗢 of Austria, and Eric Weisskopf, who's CEO at 𝗖𝗘𝗢 Aviation in Malta and also board member of Flying Group. So that's a very talented, experienced panel that we have here. Now, Brexit is a vast subject, of course, and there's a lot of ground to be covered. And we could spend the rest of the afternoon to discuss Brexit. So let's focus on some of the hot issues that people have been facing with regarding Brexit lately, and again during these first 4 months. Tax and customs is a key issue. As you all know, the UK is now a separate customs territory apart from the EU. So our friends at Martyn Fiddler will shed some light in a moment. Traffic rights is a very important issue because this is what rules the right for operators on both sides of the channel to go to each other's territory. So we'll discuss that, and we'll also see whether it makes sense for some of the UK operators to set up AOCs in Europe. Some of them have already done so. So let's start with tax and customs, and the consequences of Brexit on the way these aircraft are taxed and they cross borders. So Adrian and Heather, the floor is yours. Can you give aircraft owners some good news here?
We're going to try. We are going to try our best anyway. So thank you very much, Matthieu, for setting the scene. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, Alison and Quaynote, for allowing us this opportunity. And we're going to discuss how Brexit has caused confusion, frustration, but also has opportunities and can be viewed as positive, hopefully. So as Matthieu has said, Adrian and I are going to focus on tax and customs issues. The other amazing panelists will be discussing operational issues. So the departure of the UK from the European Union, yeah, it was a biggie. But in reality, it's just created another tax and customs zone in the European area. So remembering that we do have Switzerland, we do have the CIS area, they are their own independent customs and tax territories. And also that the European Union has only lost 1 member. So it's gone from 28 down to 27, which means there's still 27 states to not agree with one another, to infight and come up with different interpretations of rules. So all that said, The most popular question that we have received from all of our clients to date is if I was imported before Brexit, what is my situation now? So, Adrian, on that note, a very, very simple question. Is there any level of simplistic answer?
Well, the simple answer is, before you had one import and one customs territory, the EU, and now you have one import and two customs territories, and 2 into 1 doesn't go. That's the simple answer. It effectively leaves owners with an importation, yes, but an importation into where? Into which territory? Is it into the EU? Is it into the UK? Is it into both still? I think the absolute that we've come to understand from various tax counsel that we've talked to is that you can't carry on as if nothing has happened, because over the last 4 years we've moved inexorably to the point where we've created 2 customs territories out of 1, and clearly something has happened. So to carry on as if the aircraft remains imported into both territories would just be wrong, and possibly contrary to tax law, shall we say. So you now have a situation where you ideally need to choose. The choice appears to be binary between either looking at the aircraft as being imported into the UK or into the EU, but not both. Now, typically the paperwork will represent where the aircraft should remain imported. So if you have, I don't know, a UK Isle of Man owner and the aircraft is largely based in the UK, then presumably the import document will be for the UK or the Isle of Man. It's one territory. Or conversely, you have an aircraft based in the EU in the remainder 27 countries. The owner lives in the EU, the aircraft's based in the EU, and the import document, you would hope, is for one of the EU countries. Therefore, when the aircraft arrives, the paperwork will look very much like what you would expect for an aircraft imported into that territory. However, okay,
so sorry, I'm having some internet issues my end. So what about re-importation into the other jurisdiction?
Well, you are left with that other territory. What do you do? How do you get back into the UK if that's been removed, if you like, from your customs territory, your overall customs territory? Now, how do you get back into the EU if you have a UK importation? Now, you can enter under temporary admission. That might be possible. Or you could possibly enter by re-importation into that other territory. So that re-importation could be relatively straightforward. We have imported a great many aircraft. I mean, one of the things we're known for is importation of aircraft, and we have re-imported a great many aircraft into the EU where that customs territory has been lost to UK imported aircraft, and the other way round. We've imported aircraft back into the UK. Now, fortunately for most of the audience here concerned with charter operation, the aircraft concerned can be imported at 0 rate VAT. Therefore, the good news here is, yes, it looks like there is very much an administrative procedure in order to re-import aircraft into the other customs territory, which has now been separated off. But that importation, whether it's in the UK or if it's into the EU, would be 0 rated for VAT. So there shouldn't be a tax cost in most cases.
Thank you very much, Adrian. So I think what you have described in the general is if you were imported previously, you're into one or the other jurisdictions, and there's various options to allow you to go into the alternate jurisdiction. But let's try and get some detail. Matthieu mentioned that, you know, we're after Brexit now, and of course on the 26th of December We got a, well, quite frankly, a disappointing document, which was called the trade deal, that took 4.5 years to develop. Slightly light on detail, but what detail did we get, Adrian? Was there anything in there on business aircraft? And in addition to that, have we had any additional regulations, guidance, documentation from any government whatsoever subsequent?
Well, in terms of customs and VAT, there was very little in the trade and cooperation agreement. What there was concerned airlines, and by extension, you can say, well, where you've got an airline, you could reasonably say that it equally applies to a charter operator acting effectively as an airline for customs and VAT purposes. And the Trade and Cooperation Agreement basically said that there shouldn't be any restrictions on re-importing aircraft. And that was curious because there were never any restrictions anyway. It also said that there shouldn't be any tax on the re-importation of airline aircraft, charter aircraft by extension. And actually, as I've just said, those aircraft in the main are zero rated for VAT. So it must have been a very tough part of that trade and cooperation agreement to draft, because it didn't really add anything. And sadly for other business aircraft, there wasn't anything else. In terms of other regulation, hardly anything at all that we've come across. There are various rules out there that we've been able to apply to aircraft in certain circumstances, but they're general customs rules as opposed to anything specific for aircraft.
Okay then, as we promised, we would come up with something positive and opportunistic coming out of this, and we've got about 1 minute and 50 seconds left. One, from my perspective, opportunities coming out of Brexit, actually aircraft owners have more opportunities to import their aircraft in a way that is more tailored to their individual use. And we all know that aircraft are individual items, so whether they combine full importation with temporary admission or how they choose to do that. But one of the bigger opportunities, and certainly we've seen a huge amount of interest in this, is the UK becoming a closing jurisdiction on sale of aircraft. Adrian, you've got about a minute. Can you explain the positives of this, not just from a tax perspective, but also from a convenience, cost and maintenance perspective?
Okay, so very quickly, the UK is now separate customs and VAT territory to Europe. Therefore, if you want to close without European VAT applying, often aircraft have, in the past, they've gone to the Channel Islands. There's no tax in the Channel Islands, in Guernsey particularly. However, if you want to escape EU VAT now, you can come to the UK because there's no EU VAT that applies in the UK. What about UK VAT, I hear you say? Well, in the UK, there's a system of customs warehouses which I mean, we apply to most business aircraft airports, and you can enter into a customs warehouse to escape UK VAT. You've already escaped EU VAT, and then the aircraft is able to, the transaction is able to close in the UK with the aircraft on the ground, where you have maintenance facilities at hand in order to look after the aircraft. So if the aircraft, if something were to happen, you're not stuck, if you like, in the Channel Islands having to fly in maintenance. It's already there because you've got the aircraft at an airfield where you want it to be. It may also help in terms of applying mortgage. There may be legal aspects to this where you want to close under English law. Matthieu may have something to say about that, but that's the kind of benefit that we can now see. The UK can be used far more as a closing jurisdiction to help brokers and others. Perfect. Thank you very much, Adrian. Despite us agreeing not to antagonise Matthieu on closing and choice of law, but Matthieu, back to you. We're happy to answer questions now or questions later.
Great, thank you very much to the both of you. Yes, it's true that you know there will be closing in the UK will solve a number of issues, including 𝗚𝗚𝗙𝗂𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗍. But that might be a separate discussion about the choice of law and so on and so forth. And I won't bore everyone here with the various aspects of selecting English law. Anyway, thank you very much again for this. Moving on to what we generally call the freedoms of the air. Freedoms of the air are rights that are granted to operators basically within the Union to allow operators to fly from one country to another, from one member state to another, and take traffic and to other jurisdictions within the EU. Now, with the UK being outside the EU, all that is being changed, and as a result of the trade and cooperation agreement that you've mentioned before, some of the traffic rights have been lost as a result of Brexit on each side of the channel. So I thought, Derek and Eric, it might be good to set the scene and explain what these freedoms are, and more precisely what traffic rights have been lost on each side, but I guess presumably more on the UK side, flying to the EU. Derek and Eric, over to you.
Yeah. So we have Eric and Derek, which probably sounds almost the same here with many people watching. Derek, please start.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Interestingly for us in the UK side, we obviously had the fullest access to the European market before the UK's exit from the EU, and then as a result of that wonderful agreement that Heather described so well earlier, we found that at the end that we wouldn't have had the fullest access that we were quite used to having and enjoyed over the years. So what we ended up with was the ability to operate third and fourth freedom flights. So to describe, obviously, to go from the UK to an EU member state or an EU member state back to the UK, which is absolutely fine if you are. I think about airlines in the UK. If you're like Jet2 or if you're British Airways, then that's absolutely wonderful. But when you are a private jet operator like we are, and we're operating more than third and fourth freedom flights, so specifically fifth, so our ability to fly from the EU to the EU. So to have that part taken away as the result of the trade agreement was a really difficult one for us to have to manage. So it's taken access, a large amount of access away that was there previously. And it's not to say, though, however, that it cannot be done, but of course the process to request the various permits that would allow you to operate these trips have to be requested. They take time and they can be rejected as well. So obviously that has been quite an impact to most UK operators at this side. It's definitely been a difficult and trying few months in this transition period where everyone is trying to get used to the new arrangements and setting up permits for flights. So yeah, it's definitely been interesting, to say the least. I think it's been masked how difficult this is by COVID, because I think COVID has played a large part in the inactivity over the past few months. It's very difficult, I would say, right now for a UK operator to fully gauge, in my opinion, the impact of this trade agreement as it stands. But it would be better to be able to, if you ask me the question, for example, in the next 3 months, as we come out of lockdown and most of Europe starts to come out of lockdown, ask me the same question in 3 months and my answer could be different. That said, there's a lot of bilateral agreements that are taking place between the UK and various EU member states, which could make the process slightly easier for UK operators. But that said, that's still not, regardless of the bilateral agreements, it's still not going to give the UK operators the fullest access to the market that they once had.
Yeah, I agree.
Eric, anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Derek. And I think the main point here is really that the stress test as such is only coming now in, I would say, June, July, and onwards, you know, as people are hopefully starting to charter aircraft again. So that's when we have full clarity of how complex the whole thing is. Now for us, and changing perspective, you know, as a EU operator, and I'm speaking both for Flying Group, being, you know, in the Benelux countries, very close to the channel and easy to hop over to the South UK market. For sure, we will lose the one or the other flight, and for sure it's too complex, 72 hours before to apply and, you know, go through the whole process. We will test it for sure. We haven't done it yet, really. But we will definitely try it and you know, keep on reporting on EBA level, etc. For us as a call it European operator, we're not really affected. The fifth freedom, you know, to fly into London, for example, and carry a passenger then onwards to, let's say, New York or Moscow, has always been a debatable and very elastic freedom right. And some countries like Germany, I remember in the case of Russia, was interpreting it already, you know, 10 years ago in a total different format than the rest of Europe. So the fifth freedom, I think, needs to be tested still, how that really kind of works in reality. We'll see, because that would be, especially in the long range charter market, which is the most lucrative one, will be an important player. I mean, London has been, you know, a gate to the US, and there has been a very active, you know, transatlantic market, one-way market, almost a world in itself, going out of London. Now, let's see how this works. I mean, we have no experience and nothing to comment at this stage. It remains very theoretical. That's the charter side. Otherwise, I totally agree with Derek. I mean, as a European operator, it's easier, and as a Maltese operator, it's even easier, because the talks between the former British colony and the UK have started early, but at this stage, it's not giving us a benefit which we could really kind of, you know, use. But that's to come in the next weeks and to test. Now, what is probably equally interesting, besides the traffic rights, is the whole perspective about, you know, aircraft management. And I think, you know, Air Charter Scotland and we're both in this domain as well. So it's equally important to have that perspective. And there we look much more towards the fiddlers of this world, if I can say so, in terms of, is it a risk, or are there new opportunities to import aircraft? Are there new business potentials? Yes, definitely. I mean, we have a whole handful of former Isle of Man clients who were not really truly UK taxpayers finally, who suddenly got very interested in you know, onboarding in Europe. So there is a bit of a niche market for us. I wouldn't call it a boom, and have seen, you know, keywords like Brexit buster and whatever. I'm not believing in that. I'm believing it's adding challenges, but it will equally add opportunities. And if London on the long run plays it well, you know, it can be another market in itself, you know, but that needs to be tested, and I hope for the best. So that's where we stand in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you both. I think, Derek, it's fair to say that you know, given the relative size of each market, you know, to be fair, the UK operators have more to lose than the European ones, and so, you know, the months to come are going to be key to, you know, how this is going to develop, and how much of this fifth freedom you guys are going to be able to take back.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely going to be very, very interesting to work. I will say that in the first maybe month after the deal, everything was very quiet and nobody really knew what was going on. I think most of the I know certainly through the UK national authorities, they stayed open. Normally they closed for 2 weeks through Christmas and New Year, but because the UK was leaving the EU, they stayed open right throughout that period. But obviously all the other EU national authorities closed down for Christmas and New Year, as you might expect. It's normal. So of course, when everybody come back from that break, all the UK operators are searching for answers, right? We want to know where we can go, what we can do. And of course, those national authorities had their own work to do, and maybe dealing with the UK wasn't quite such an important factor in their day-to-day. So I think as time's gone by and the conversation has moved on a lot, I will say from my point of view, most of the national authorities that we've been engaging with directly for block permits, for example, have been very, very helpful. Of course, maybe some of those national authorities are not set up very well to be dealing with the high level of inquiries that are coming, as a result of the exit from the EU. But I think it will be very interesting because, again, I keep coming back to the COVID side, because of COVID, there's been a much reduced demand for travel. Right, so now we're coming into this moment where everybody wants to go on a break. Things are starting to open up. The infection rates are coming down. People want to go places. You know, there's obviously in the UK, there's the vaccine rollout has been very, very good, and in some other European countries that's been similar. So yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how we can work, and obviously I think all UK operators are definitely going to have a really, really close eye on how much, I don't even want to say reciprocity at this point, but just how much engagement that they're going to get back in these requests, because I know that there's going to be a lot. And hopefully, if it continues the way that the past few months has been, and I think hopefully for UK operators, it will be better than how they maybe first feared.
Sure, absolutely. And it's actually absolutely right to stress that, how much COVID has affected, the traffic and Brexit, and just make Brexit even worse for everyone in the industry. And you're absolutely right to point this out. Moving on to, I was going to say, real life. How is it these days to fly to the UK and to the EU? Starting with UK, Glenn and Bernhard, can you give us some insight on how the UK CAA has been dealing with EU flights to the UK post-Brexit? Are you finding it easy, and did you find the responses from the authority that you expected?
I'll leave that to Bernhard for a minute, and then after he said his experiences, I'll tell you a little bit of the background from the CAA.
Right.
Yeah, hello everybody. So I would say that the British CAA is basically a role model for all authorities in the world, I would say. They were really well prepared. This was at least our experience. So we got notified, I think already back in October, that we should apply for a block permit, and that the process was very well structured, very, very clear and straightforward. There were no question marks and so on. So, and we went through this process, and actually we received our block permit prior Christmas. So we could seamlessly operate into the new year, so the post-Brexit era. And we had no, let's say, limitations other than the norms. We could not operate commercially within the UK, but everything else was possible. So flying in and out and positioning the aircraft within the UK was as it has been always. So the UK CA was really well prepared, I'd say, and the experience was amazing. And even we knew that the block permit was time limited, so it had an expiry date by end of March. The authority, the British authority, proactively approached us and said, listen, please send the application to renew it way in advance, and very clear again what were required to get an extension for that. So I think the UKC was well prepared, and they knew that the other side, so basically all the other 27 member states, were not prepared. in that level that they basically granted us, let's say, a breathing period for 3 months that the member states should do something, to achieve this level playing field. But unfortunately, my experience was nobody woke up during the first quarter this year, and all of a sudden, then in the very last minute, so end of the last week before end of March, the UK CA informed, I think, across all the operators in Europe, said, well, unfortunately, the member states didn't move forward, and there's no real fair proposal on the table, and we're not in a position to extend the block permits, which is fair enough, I would say. We had months and months and months, and then we even had this 3 months and after Brexit already, and nobody did anything. At least this was what my experience. So and then we reached out actually to our Austrian CA who is responsible for our AOC, and we told them about the situation. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, they told us, well, we haven't looked into that yet. Yeah. So this was 1 week before the block permit expired, and everything really looked at that's it, end of March. So 1st of April, we cannot operate in and out as we have been done before, and we have to go on a flight per flight permit, which is quite complex. I mean, Eric just laid it out, and but interestingly, we were able to have a very, let's say, a very good discussion with our CA, and then it moves quickly, not just to the CA, it moves to a political level, where the government got involved, and we were able to explain what is the situation and how this block permit worked actually, and how well prepared the UK was, and we need to respond in a fair way, and we need to give them back in a reciprocal way what we have already received, and we were months behind, and again in this phase, in this very critical phase, so the last few days before it expired, the British CA was still very collaborative and reached out and discussed with our authority, particularly the Austrian authority, and the politicians involved, and sorted it out. And amazingly, on the last day, actually, we received another extension, and was well managed. But I think it was again driven by the UK CA. So big applause and chapeau to these folks. I think they're really a role model, and luckily also I think we have EBA. And we have the Air Charter Association as well, who were involved in this process, and they supported very much. I think this is what those associations are for, and why we pay actually a member fee, that they represent our industry on all fronts. And I know that particular EBA now is also involved in further discussions. So it's not over yet. We have an extension for 3 months, but we need a solution beyond 30th of June, which is basically around the corner, and I know particular Robert from EBA is really pushing to get a long-term solution for all 27 member states. This is what we need, and I think this is just fair. But again, I would say the British CA has done an amazing job.
Glenn, I think this is gold to your ears, isn't it?
It is really, but there was a huge amount of work done by the UK CA way in advance of this. I think nobody in Europe or the UK wanted Brexit to take this long, 4.5 years, and then suddenly we get a deal just when everybody's locked down with COVID and at home for Christmas. So actually by the time the 1st of January came, time to try and resolve these things just had elapsed. But I've never thought I'd say this, thank you COVID, that impact was massively covered, as we've mentioned before. Now, the UK CAA's stance right from the start was, we're here to do business, we're open for business, we want to do business with you, and we would like you to do business with us. It's a two-way street. So whilst initially as a UK operator, hearing that all our wonderful European colleagues had been given carte blanche, keep going as you want to, whilst was a bit of a shock, I think was absolutely the right thing to do, because by demonstrating outwardly, this is what we're doing, this is what we'd like you to do, has now proved dividends. Now, time was the issue when obviously we had such short notice to prepare, or certainly most of the European national authorities had such a short time to prepare and weren't even sure what regulations they were defaulting back to. By having had the collective EU, but then suddenly this breakdown that not only was the UK leaving the EU, it's created a breakdown to 27 countries having to make their own decisions, which is something quite foreign to many of us that were in the EU since 1974. And it even took some national authorities weeks to actually find out what the regulation was. Now, since that time, and time is a great healer, and here we are almost in June, and I'm delighted to say how things are working for us as a UK operator operating in Europe, which I'll move on to in a moment. But you know, we had some issues for example, on the 2nd of January, we had a flight. It was from Dublin to Zurich. Zurich's outside the EU, obviously. Dublin's inside the EU, UK operator. We were granted a permit immediately, no problem at all. And literally hours before the flight, the Irish called us up and they were hugely apologetic. It was a phone call, not an email, to say, we're so sorry, we don't believe we can issue this permit. And when I questioned them, are you sure? No, we're not sure, but that's why we have to withdraw the permit. Now, luckily, if you go between Dublin and Zurich, there's a place called the UK in the way. So we simply stopped for a technical stop. Other than that, between then and now, we have managed to accomplish every single flight we've wanted to. And whilst we've been quieter than normal, it hasn't been completely quiet. Now, the interesting thing about the freedoms of the air, we keep talking about the 9 freedoms of the air, which actually is inaccurate. There's only 5 freedoms of the air. The remaining freedoms of the air are known as so-called because they have never been ratified. They don't form any part of any legitimised treaty. So we have, Synergy Aviation has successfully completed 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th freedom flights across Europe. We're actually operating way beyond what I ever thought was possible with no problem, other than we have to apply for a permit in some countries. Many countries have given us block permits, including France, Italy, Austria now. I think Malta's very happy to have us. Other countries have decided that actually you don't need any permits. It's not a problem. Germany considers that the 1956 Paris Agreement applies. And lots of other countries have just said, look, we're happy, you carry on. You've got the 𝗚𝗚𝗙 third country operator approved. That's all we need. We don't even need you to apply for permits. So that's fantastic news. So as I say, time has become a great healer. We're almost there. There's a few countries that have a problem. And one of those is Spain, where their law, and it's their hard law, talks about the security arrangements that must be in place. And that has been a problem because they would like the UK operators to be operating down there. We would like to be going down there. And they have this hard law that says that we have to have the security accreditation. Now, we've worked very hard with the Spanish government, and they have now accepted some of our terminology and will be issuing us with the accreditation any day now. But it's been an uphill struggle, not because any country has been obstinate, not because any country is trying to prevent business happening, because that's what it's all about. It's all about business. It's been that default position of what is the regulation now? And it has been extremely interesting to see the collective EU not working in any way collectively for this industry and many other industries, you know, fisheries, transport, etc. But obviously business aviation does fall outside of the normal requirements, regulations. It doesn't quite fit into all the legal structures. Now, as for the UK, I think the UK aircraft registry has an opportunity that needs to be, needs to be marketed. They should be talking to aviatorsagency.com, but things like being members of the Cape Town Convention, as well as all the things that Heather was talking about as well. You know, it's not all doom and gloom. We as an operator have been operating pretty much as freely as we were before. It's taken some time, but we are. And I think there are opportunities as well for the aircraft registry in the UK.
Heather, I think you wanted to comment on that.
I was actually just going to add to what Glenn and Bernhard said. And while I'm never going to call the pandemic a blessing in any level of way, from a timing perspective, because of the way Brexit was, from a tax and customs, you actually couldn't do anything to re-import your aircraft prior to Brexit. You had to wait until the 1st of January. The 1st of January is a national holiday. Actually, the first time you probably could have imported anything was the 3rd or the 4th of January. And if you could imagine the bottleneck of people trying to re-import and the amount of people available to re-import, actually, if the pandemic did one thing, which is not everybody needed to import at the same time. So I can only imagine what it is in other industries, but it would have been crazy mental if it hadn't been for that. That's all I was going to say.
Okay, I take that opportunity to remind people that they may ask questions to our panelists. So please do, raise questions that we will take time to respond at the end of this discussion. So this previous discussion, takes us to the next one, which is flying to the EU, and obviously, big applause we've heard to the UK CA. They've done a great job. And, sitting on this side of the channel, I have to say that it sounds as if the European CAs have not done such a great job from the comments we hear anyway. And so I'd like to ask Derek and Glenn, our UK operators here, again, what is their experience flying to the EU, bearing in mind that obviously all of a sudden, you have swapped one single counterparty, the EU basically, and EASA, for 27. And as you said before, you're not dealing with, 27 different CAs with no, apparently, no harmonization, no single process. So I suppose your life as an operator willing to fly to EU countries has become a bit of a nightmare. Do you want to elaborate on this and again give the audience some practical insight as to what you've been dealing with, flying to Germany, France, Spain, and other countries, not citing anyone in particular necessarily, but again, what are your war stories? What is your experience of flying to Europe in these last 4 months?
Derek, after you.
Thanks, Glenn. I have to say the biggest issue that we've had is probably just from a workload point of view, because if you think of the amount of time that it's taken, not only if you obviously dealing with every operator has to deal with COVID and the restrictions that it's caused by flying into those countries, on top of that you have to, as a UK operator, consider that you need to have permits to operate. So before there were any bilateral agreements and before there were any sign of any form of reciprocity between the different states, we had to put a huge amount of work and effort in. And actually it was probably speaking with our team, we'd say we probably trebled the workload on what was a normal, say, for example, if we were flying from London to Nice and back again, our workload has trebled to make that trip happen than what it would have been before the 31st of December last year. So that's been quite difficult. I think the other side of that has been response time. So, for example, we were so used to dealing with on-demand charter to go to the EU, right? So that's a big part of what we do. Someone just calls up and they want to get airborne as fast as you possibly can. Now, all of a sudden, you need to get permits. So these take time. So if I have an aircraft sat in Biggin Hill, for example, and there's one of my EU colleagues sitting on the ramp alongside us in their aircraft, then it's more likely that aircraft is going to go and take the trip, because from the UK side, we would have to have a permit to operate to the EU. But as Glenn had pointed out earlier, obviously the CA were extremely pragmatic, and I do actually agree with the approach of the CA to the UK side, and it's heartening to hear actually Bernhard's viewpoint on that as well. So it's I can appreciate as well from a UK point of view how from an operator, when that started, everyone was like, oh, is this okay? Like everybody's coming and going and taking all the work, but we're just sat here doing not very much. And actually, I think it was played very, very well because of COVID. But that said, at that moment, the difficulty was time. The difficulty is workload, and it still holds true today. So that's been the main takeaways, I would say, for us. In terms of dealing with those other national authorities, actually, it's been quite good, actually, to be honest with you. I think we've got block permits in place with Italy, France, Spain, Greece, and Austria as well at the moment, as it stands. I have to say, I commend Italy from the outset, because Italy have probably been the easiest country to work with, and I know a lot of people would maybe find that hard to believe because they think Italy can be quite bureaucratic and difficult, but I don't know if that is the case. But I would say from this point of view, from our dealings, they were absolutely great to deal with. So, and hopefully as time goes by, we can get some more bilateral agreements and more block permits, and the situation gets more positive in time, fingers crossed. But that's been our main takeaway. We've not actually, like Glenn, lost any trips. We have done fifth freedom flights, and we haven't been rejected for any of those requests yet. I say yet because it could happen, but right now it hasn't. We've been able to operate every trip as requested, but that does take time. And we only could do that because we knew of the flight more than at least 3 days in advance. So it was easy. If that was a request for tomorrow to operate that fifth freedom flight, then I highly doubt that we'd have been able to do that. But that's been our experience from that. But obviously, over to you, Glenn, and how you've found it from your side.
If we start at January the 1st, which seems a sensible place to start, I literally had my head in my hands thinking, how's this going to work? In fact, January the 1st, looking at the original agreement we saw on Christmas Eve, it was going to be okay. We can go into Europe, we can come out of Europe. We won't be able to pick up in Nice and drop off in Paris, but that's not the end of the world. It's a portion of our business, but it's not the end of the world. By the time we got to late January, I was really, really concerned that actually aviation for a British operator could well be completely unviable for many of the reasons that you've just said. We fast forward now to here we are sort of early May. Friendships is an amazing thing. The people that work in operations here, they're on first name terms with lots of the people at the authorities around Europe who are all doing their best. They're doing what they can. And actually now, even a go now flight, some of the early flights, may have taken occasionally the view that you need a permit before you land, not before you take off, which helped us win some business perhaps that we may not have had otherwise. But also we are getting last minute go now. We had one just last week. We're in Nice, we landed in Nice, getting some fuel, phone rang, can you go in 2 hours to Dublin? Funnily enough, Dublin again. And the French gave us a permit almost immediately, no problem at all. I appreciate that might not be the same case at sort of 11 o'clock on a Saturday evening, but certainly we've seen everything that we want to do, we are able to do, and things are moving forward in a really, really positive fashion. I'm absolutely delighted where we are now. I'm frustrated it's perhaps taken a bit longer to get here than any of us would have wanted to. But certainly I think we're in a strong position, and the months moving forward, it is only going to get easier and easier. The will is there from all of our all the European countries we're dealing with. The will is there from us in the UK to continue doing business and welcome business coming across as well. It's not all about us, there's 27 others to consider. And I really think that certainly over the next 4 months, we will almost end up in the situation we were in on the 31st of December, 2020.
Thank you very much, Glenn. And at this stage, I want to correct what I just before, perhaps too quickly and sharply. Someone made the comment in the audience, and you've just confirmed this, that the European civil aviation authorities are doing their best at the moment, as you said, to cooperate with the UK CA and the UK operators to make sure that there is, reciprocity and traffic over both sides of the channel. And I'm sure that is the case. So again, apologies if my comment was not appropriate. I think there's one question from the audience. Do you think there's an opportunity for EU and UK operators to collaborate, that is share flights in this new landscape? I guess this is some kind of the equivalent of a coach sharing. Would you, the both of you, would you see scope for cooperation between operators on both sides of the channel?
I certainly think so, and it's something that that even I've spoken to several operators who have similar aircraft types. the slight issue is it never quite fits together completely. It's almost two separate jigsaw puzzles trying to come together, because you've got your crew in one place, your customer in another place, the aircraft has to end up somewhere else. So whilst it is possible, and certainly I think there is a will to do it, it's very rare that that opportunity will come up. And it's not to do with not trusting somebody with a customer. It's just the logistics sometimes just don't quite gel. But again, as I said earlier about the will to trade, I think the will is there. Just want to make one very quick comment about the authorities all over Europe. The UK CAA tried to engage with all of them, and all of them wanted to engage with the UK CAA. But the European Commission categorically told them they could not engage with the UK CAA until the trade agreement was done. So it's great, Bernhard and others, how well the UK CAA did. The other national authorities were not permitted to do so.
Very, very interesting light, on these discussions. Derek, anything you want to add on this?
No, I would echo Glenn's sentiments there. I mean, I think in all these situations, sometimes it presents opportunity, and collaboration on these sides is a really, really good idea. I think, just logistically and pulling it together would be an interesting one to see. But of course, I think if there's so long as there's a willingness on both sides, then of course, then why wouldn't anyone want to explore that possibility of that collaboration? We're a very small industry, aren't we? Really, and especially in the private aviation side. So, and it transcends borders. So, if there's anything that we can all do to help one another's business, then we should all try and do that.
Okay, one of the topics on the agenda was, whether it would make sense or it would be actually a requirement for UK operators to move to the EU or move some of their business to the EU and set up an EU AOC. Listening to you, to the two of you, it sounds as if things might improve fairly quickly, and that it's an expensive investment, obviously. So it might not appear such a strong, requirement after all. What do you think?
Well, if I can speak from my or our point of view, we did decide to set up an EU AOC. As we know, it was 4.5 years of political talks and political posturing as to whether there's going to be a deal, whether there won't be a deal. And the one thing that business doesn't like is uncertainty, right? Everybody wants to know what's going on. So for us, it was all about business continuity. And because we knew what the lead time would be to setting up a European AOC, we couldn't wait until the 24th of December when it ended up becoming. And as we knew what the result of those talks were, that we were going to end up with third and fourth freedom, I think, to be honest, internally here, we were probably all looking at each other thinking, yeah, that was a good call, really, to set up the EU AOC. Longer term, I do think it was still the right thing for us to do, to set up the EU AOC, and I do see that continuing to grow for us. It will be very interesting for us over the next few months to see how the summer pans out for us, and when we talk about the access to the market and the fact that COVID will have gone away. So for us, it was just making sure that we could still continue. I still think we did the absolutely right thing, and I still know that there are other UK operators that are either thinking about it or have already gone through the motions, and if not, they've got their European AOC, they're probably very close to it. So it certainly wouldn't just have been us, and it's a fair question. And for us, again, it was all about business continuity. It was all about making sure that we didn't, for us, fall off a cliff at the other side. We wanted to make sure that we could still operate in the best way possible. And I think over the summer will be the real trying time for us to look back and see, was that the right, ultimately the right thing to do. I will say that there is a lot more positive messages coming out of the UK. So if you are a UK operator, you definitely probably do feel a lot better, and sorry, Glenn's mentioning that as well. You feel a lot better than how you did maybe in the 1st of January, perhaps. And so hopefully that does continue. There's going to be operators out there that have no intention of setting up an EU AOC. We only did that because we felt it was right for us. There'll be companies out there that will have no intention to set up a European AOC. Hopefully that won't be required. We just did that from our side because we felt it was the best thing for us to do.
Right. Right. Eric and Bernhard, you don't want to open a UK AOC, do you?
We say no, but talking about the UK market, I mean, I regularly consult Bernhard's SpiderNet publications on LinkedIn, where you see the traffic. And I totally believe that we have this market banana, you know, which starts way up north London and goes, you know, across Europe. So for me, that stays one united market. That's clear. And people with it and that market are not particularly interested. I'm talking about our charter clients, about the hurdles we have. So as a combined industry, I'm sure, you know, we have to continue to work hard to make this and keep this one market, because this protectionism which now has been installed is not really appreciated by the clients, because you might have a charter passenger who has his business in the UK but equally pays tax in France or in Switzerland, or has become a global or at least a European citizen, including the UK still. You were asking on like war stories, you know, and whether we want to have a UK AOC. For the time being not, but why not? It could again raise new opportunities, and I believe that out of that there will be a lot of energy, even positive energy, you know, coming out. So whatever a change is forced, and even more through COVID, which has been a catalyst for new ideas, I'm quite positive, you know, that new good ideas will come out of that. In terms of war stories, to come back quickly, we had the biggest struggle on the pilot licensing side, because we had about 1/3 of our pilots being UK pilots with UK licenses. And with some of them, it went very well, and some others had to be grounded literally in the first days of January. Not dramatic, but again, another war story for later on for our kids to share. So that's a point which was actually creating the most work for us to sort out this licenses, and it was a difficult process to handhold, because we were not really in the driver's seat, and we had to kind of coach those you know, 20 pilots on what to do in individual jurisdictions. So far, we're happy where we are. You know, we're watching the situation. We're watching the transatlantic markets mainly as a long-range operator. But let's see where we go.
Good, excellent. Glenn, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, the two big issues with an AOC is the ownership, first of all, and then secondary, the domestic market, particularly the domestic market that you're actually based in. So I've offered every Maltese operator all of our domestic Maltese traffic, any inter-island traffic will go through them if they'll give me all their UK into traffic, which hasn't worked very well so far. But in terms of the ownership, what the UK has offered is that foreign nationals can own UK airlines. Now that's very different. I can't go and buy a Maltese AOC. I can't go and start a Maltese AOC because I'm not an EU national. So I can't own that business. Clearly there's ways around it. And from a personal point of view, I've got lots of friends in Malta. I could give them 51% of the business. But actually we can't do it in the same manner that we can in the UK. So really it's the domestic market and the ownership structure. And again, I think that's a good opportunity for the UK registry. Move over Malta, everyone's going to move to the UK.
To quickly jump in here, obviously many Maltese AOCs are owned by British nationals, and there are, let's call it work in progress. So it's not as bad as you say, yeah?
No, I think we have to work as an industry together, as we have done before, regardless. I mean, aviation is particular business aviation is a market enabler to make get deals done, make businesses successful. And certainly the UK is a very important business partner for any member states, regardless Brexit or not. So I think we have to keep this relation at highest level possible. And personally for me, I think still London is one of the most important key markets in terms of many sectors. And we have to go in and out regularly. And I think there's no change because of Brexit. That's why I think we as operators have to work together. And as just mentioned by Glenn, I mean, we're happy to give domestic flights in the UK to operators like Glenn and Derek, because they're great partners and we can help each other. So and provide the experience our customer is looking for. I think at the end of the day, it's that we want to make the customers happy, and we have to find solutions for that in the most efficient way.
There's one last question before we close. Someone is asking, would mutual recognition of licenses between flight crew be desirable for the future if dual AOC operators become more frequent? So, mutual recognition of pilot licenses. Does anyone want to pick that one up?
Yeah, I think that's right. I agree. I think it should be touched on that, and I echo that. We've also seen a lot of issues from a licensing point of view. I think even that's even been experienced on the engineering side as well for engineering licenses also. So yeah, definitely, if a recognition on that on both sides would absolutely help operators as well.
Right, excellent. Lorna, I think we've reached the hour. So, I think I'd like to thank you very, very much, our panelists. They've done a great job today. Thank you so much. It was, very, very interesting, very, very good insight on what's going on at the moment. And after all, a pretty positive message, I think. So again, thank you, everyone. Lorna, over to you if you want to.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you very much indeed, Matthieu, and thank you to our distinguished panel, and also to you, our audience, for tuning in. So we will be sending out recordings of this session once we've got everyone's permission to do so. So please bear with us a few days while we get that organised. And obviously, everyone out there, let us know if you've got any suggestions or comments for this event or for future events. Maybe you would like more information about partnering with us as speakers or sponsors for other webinars, or indeed in-person events eventually, who knows. So next week at the same time, we are looking at ports, travel and yachts restrictions. So make sure to join us again then. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.